On the night of April 15, 2023, heavily armed police escorted a high-profile prisoner through a hospital courtyard in Prayagraj, India. The air was thick with humidity and the blinding flash of news cameras. 3 men carrying microphones and cameras shoved their way to the front of the media scrum. They leveled their equipment at the prisoner and his brother, pulled out imported pistols, and executed both men on live national television. The man bleeding out on the pavement was Atiq Ahmed. In the underworld, he was known for hurling crude explosives in street fights and racking up over 100 criminal cases. But in the halls of government, he was an elected member of the Legislative Assembly 5 times over and a sitting member of parliament. This diagram maps how Atiq operated as a Bahubali, a strongman merging sheer physical muscle with absolute political immunity, using elected office to protect his gang. These sides merge into a parallel state, dictating the law and rendering the judicial system entirely powerless, which leaves us with a mathematical impossibility. How does an untouchable politician, a man with enough institutional leverage to vote on international treaties from a jail cell, end up assassinated in the street while entirely surrounded by his own state police escort? To understand the collapse of Atiq's empire, we have to look back at the turf wars of 2004. Atiq had just vacated his local legislative seat to move up to parliament, and he fully expected his brother to inherit it. Instead, a rival candidate named Raju Paul won the election. The response was absolute. In January 2005, a hit squad ambushed Raju Paul's convoy in broad daylight, firing 19 bullets into the newly elected official. Out of everyone on the street that day, exactly 1 man came forward as a prime witness, a lawyer named Umesh Paul. Over the next decade, Atiq essentially ran his own private government. He held daily courts to settle land disputes and decide dowry prices. He extorted local businesses and ordered contract hits from behind bars. 10 different judges formally refused to even hear his criminal cases. The state police were utterly paralyzed. Officers assigned to transport Atiq from his cell to the courthouse would physically hide their own uniform name tags, terrified that Atiq might memorize their identities and target their families. In 2008, the ruling coalition needed numbers to pass a highly controversial U.S.-India nuclear deal. The government actively furloughed Atiq Ahmed from prison, escorted him to parliament, and allowed him to cast a critical vote deciding an international treaty. The Bahubali system relies on a clean transaction. The highest democratic institutions guarantee legal immunity on the street, and in exchange, the strongman delivers guaranteed votes on the parliament floor. That system worked perfectly for Atiq until February 24, 2023. On that afternoon, Umesh Paul, the lone prime witness to the 2005 assassination, was stepping out of his car when a crew of heavily armed men ambushed and killed him right outside his home. This time, the hit was captured entirely on high-definition CCTV. The footage clearly showed Atiq's own son, Assad, leading the attack and firing directly into the street. The footage humiliated the ruling government. Facing intense pressure in the Legislative Assembly, Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath stood at the podium, pointed his finger, and vowed to literally grind the mafia into dust. The state abandoned the court system completely. Police initiated a rapid series of encounters, a local term often used to describe extrajudicial police killings masked as self-defense shootouts. Within weeks, multiple members of Atiq's gang were dead, including his son Assad. Atiq had spent 40 years entirely invulnerable to judges, lawyers, and legal codes. But sitting in a high-security prison, he watched helplessly as the state dismantled his empire in days, using lethal force. When a government calculates that the judicial system is too broken to secure a conviction and opts for the gun instead, the rule of law is officially suspended. Which brings us back to the hospital courtyard on April 15th. Atiq, heavily grieving the death of his son just 2 days prior, is marched toward the medical center through a gauntlet of live broadcast crews. Look closely at the schematic of the Zigana Thesis pistol used in the assassination. The 3 shooters captured at the scene were unemployed and entirely unconnected to any major organized crime syndicate, yet they executed Atiq using highly restricted, imported firearms that cost upwards of $8,000 on the black market. When interrogated, the shooters offered a terrifyingly simple motive. They didn't have a personal vendetta against Atiq. They pulled the trigger because they wanted to make a name for themselves in the violent criminal underworld. They wanted his crown. You can hand someone a gun, but the second you do, you lose all control over where they pointed. By bypassing the courts to execute criminals, the state broadcasts a clear message to the public. It gives ambitious young men permission to adopt the exact same methods to solve their own problems. The televised death of Atiq Ahmed stands as a stark mathematical proof. When a society embraces gangland rules to secure justice, anyone on the street can appoint themselves judge, jury, and executioner.